Got the sound on? Okay. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce to the members of the Planning Commission our new member, Mark Clark.
Hey, Mark.
Would you like to say a few words, explain?
Does he know? Do you know everyone? Have you?
Yep, they just were introduced.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
Welcome.
And we're missing Arlie Herbert tonight and Vince Redding.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Does anyone have any comments on the agenda? Don?
Well, I wasn't here last month, but was there a motion passed to have this a public hearing tonight? It was officially noticed. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Steve has moved to approve the agenda.
Second.
Chris seconds it.
Whatever.
All right. And all those in favor of the agenda as printed, say aye.
Aye.
Nay, if you don't want it that way. The agenda is passed. Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments about the minutes of the December 21st meeting?
I didn't see anything. I'll move approval of the minutes.
Okay. Terry, do you want to, or Mark will second that. All those in favor of approval of the December 21st, 2017 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The minutes are passed. Okay, at this time, we need election of officers. And Kay said that I could preside over this. So at this time, are there any nominations for chairman of the Planning Commission? Don?
I was going to nominate Arlie, but he's not here tonight. Can we make somebody chair that's not present?
They would have to accept the nomination. So unless we have that information.
And we have to have an acceptance tonight or after we?
That is when we need to, yeah, you have to accept the nomination before they would vote on that nomination.
The other question I had is the liaison hasn't been appointed yet. Does
A
that?
recommendation was made by the Board of Adjustment at this afternoon's meeting to recommend that the county board chair appoint Richard Huddle.
So, I mean, he wouldn't be here to be nominated for that either.
He's not technically on the planning commission at this point.
What's,
After the board meeting, the board has to appoint.
Oh, the
He has to be
board.
appointed by the county board chair first. So at this point, the liaison is still Sheree Harris.
can we postpone election of officers?
It's to take place on the first meeting of the year,
Can we
which is,
change the rule?
which is this meeting.
Pardon?
That's this meeting.
But why can't we change that?
Well, it's in the zoning code.
Pardon?
It's in the zoning code, I believe.
We can change our agenda, I think.
It's not the agenda.
Well,
Well, should we ask? Do you want to be chair again?
Well, I can be chair.
I'd like to move that Eugene be nominated to be chair.
oh, if you're willing to serve.
Yeah.
I thought with your health issues that,
Well, I've thought about it, Don, but, you know, this is
I'll second,
hopefully one of the easier responsibilities I've got,
I'll second Chris's motion.
okay? Are there any other nominations for chairman, or chairperson, I'm sorry? Are there any other nominations for chairperson? Are there any other nominations for chairperson? At this time, I suppose somebody should make a motion.
Well,
We
the
did.
motion's made, I just,
Okay,
all those in
Vote on
favor?
it.
okay. So then this would be unanimous then.
Well,
Well,
no,
you gotta
just
call for a
on it.
vote.
You just-
Okay, all those in favor of myself, Eugene Hansen, being chairman, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
It was unanimous.
Unanimous.
There you go.
All right. Then we need a vice chair person.
I'll nominate Chris Meyer.
Okay, Chris Meyer has been nominated. Sheree will second that. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, all those in favor of Chris Meyer as the vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is unanimous.
Don't get sick.
I sure wish I had control over that, Chris. And then we need a secretary. Okay, are there any nominations for secretary of the planning commission?
Well, I'll nominate Kelly Stanich.
Okay, Kelly Stanish has been nominated secretary.
Does the secretary have to really do anything?
One time I had to run the meeting because everybody else didn't show up.
So you're like the vice chair.
Yeah.
Because the
A lot of
the
vices,
Office of the Planning and Environmental Services and Zoning
They do that.
Department
Takes notes.
Yeah.
is the recording secretary. So we don't make the secretary take the minutes. They can do it.
It's kind of just like a formality.
Want me to?
Are there any other nominations for secretary? Hearing none, all those in favor of a unanimous approval of,
Oh, just all those in favor.
all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Well, it is unanimous. Thank goodness. All right, let's see. Election of officers, that's all right then, Kay? Okay, so now we go to the, the draft Winona County zoning ordinance buffer public hearing. On page 13 in our agenda. And, Kay, are you going to give us the, okay?
So some of you have seen this before, and some of you have seen it via email if you weren't able to attend or through the minutes. Late in October, we were contacted by the Board of Water and Soil Resources to say that Winona County, along with some other counties, needed to add a standalone buffer ordinance to our zoning ordinance, despite having a long-standing shoreland ordinance that fulfilled what we thought, at least in July, and what we were told by the Board of Water and Soil Resources, fulfilled the new state statute commonly referred to as the buffer law. But, oops, they changed their minds, so here we are. They put out a model buffer ordinance, which was in your packet at the last meeting. And what we did was use that as a template, used it with our shoreland ordinance language to make them compatible with one another. And it was a pretty simple couple of changes. So the things that were missing from the shoreline ordinance that were new, that they insisted be part of this, included the DNR buffer protection map, which in your packet looks like this. From the DNR, as well as adding language that grandfathering of existing uses or granting of variances is not permitted, to align with the state statute. I guess I'll move this up just a little bit here. The riparian protection and water quality practices is just the buffer law. The administrative process will match that as if Bowser had taken responsibility instead of Winona County. So much like our feedlot program, we've accepted responsibility for administration to have more of a local instead of regional working relationship with the state statute administration. But our fee structure and the associated details would exactly match what buffer administration would look like if Bowser had been doing it. So that if in the future the county board chooses to give this back, just like the feedlot program could be kicked back to the state and others, we have the ability to do that seamlessly. But at this point, the county board has accepted responsibility for administration, and so we did that so that the county maintained maximum flexibility. The fee schedule then contains those penalty fees for noncompliance. We did not make them up in Winona County. They came directly from the Board of Water and Soil Resources, lovingly called Bowser. Any statutory regulations or responsibilities for the Soil and Water Resource, or Conservation District rather, and their inspections is not detailed in this ordinance. They have their separate reporting responsibilities and what they need to do, and this isn't tied in with that. They conduct those prior to the onset of administration by the county, and that was completed by the deadline, which was in early November. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's legal language there that's from the model ordinance, but those are the salient points that were identified by Bowser that we then put forward in the ordinance. Any questions from the commission? Thank you.
Excuse me, can I get a copy of that too, for Wilson? I don't know if you guys have handouts.
Sure, I can get you a copy.
Okay.
It's online too, but
Okay.
I can make you a copy quickly.
Yeah, I'm just here representing Wilson Township, so.
Yeah,
You,
happy to. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're supposed to have the public hearing, right?
Yeah, I'll move to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay. Steve has moved to open the public hearing, and Chris seconded it. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing for the draft of the zoning ordinance on buffer ordinance, however we want to say it, is now open. Anyone wishing to speak on this topic, please come forward, state your name and address, and say whatever you want to.
If that's 2 more times.
For the second time, anyone wishing to make public comments on this zoning ordinance change, please step forward and say what you'd like.
I guess my opportunity to make comments lie here at the table.
What's this?
I guess my opportunity to make comments are up here,
Yeah.
rather than at the mic.
Right. Yes, after we close the public hearing, then any member of the planning commission can say whatever they want to. All right, for the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak on this proposed county zoning ordinance change, step forward and state your name and address and make your comments. Well, I don't see,
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Steve moved to close the
Second.
public hearing and Chris seconded it.
Kelly.
Or Kelly, I get this mixed up every time. But anyway, all those in favor of closing the public hearing on this revision, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is now closed. So Don, here is your opportunity.
This is so full of jargon and cross-references to state statute that it's above my head, and for that reason alone, I won't agree to it. But My county commissioner is concerned about the expense of addressing state statutes. Now, this ordinance is going to pass all enforcement activity down to the county rather than the SWCD, which is more broadly funded by the state. So how's the county going to be reimbursed for this enforcement activity and this monitoring and enforcement activity?
Stephanie, do you want to?
I believe that we're receiving funding from the
Yeah.
state as
It's
a result.
87,000 annually.
How much?
87,000 something annually, right?
It was slightly more than that for the second year. So we have funding that has been transferred to the county for accepting buffer administration.
And your assertion that this should perhaps fall into SWCD's?
Right.
Okay, they are not an enforcing agency. It would be counterproductive to ask people to come to the Soil and Water District to implement improvements to their farm if that same person was also going to be the person enforcing violations on their farm. So,
That is correct. We have our choice of Bowser doing it or us doing it. There isn't a third option.
Yeah, Bowser, the state.
state, yep.
State, Board of Water and Soil Resources out of the Rochester office.
Why aren't we letting Bowser do it? I mean,
Because-
is there an assurance that the 87,000 or whatever it is going to cover these expenses? And does some of that 87,000 go to the SWCD from the county?
There's a separate funding pool for SWCD for the work that they do. It's unrelated to this. They don't do the enforcement piece of it. They do the inspections and verifications of parcels through aerial inspection.
Well, I would think under this scenario, the county would not be funding the local office of the SWCD in any way and let Bowser entirely fund the local office of the SWCD. This is
Question.
an example of the state pushing a mandate down on the counties, and we should be resisting all of that.
Mr. Chair, I just have a question.
Kelly.
We have been doing it this way for how many years?
1985.
Okay, so this is not a change.
Our standards are stricter than Bowser standards. So we accepted, as many other counties did, we accepted the enforcement money largely because we're down to, 29 parcels that are not, on a county the size.
29 property owners.
Yeah, so 29 property owners are not fully compliant. That's a 97 or 98% compliance rate. Why wouldn't we want to continue to do what we've been doing since 1985 and accept the $87,000 annually to do what we were going to do anyhow, which is to bring these last few into compliance?
You're asking me a question. Because with this in statute now, we're likely to see a lot more activity demanding monitoring and enforcement than we have been. And I don't think the 87,000 is going to be able to cover it.
A question again, Mr. Chair? In the years that we have, this may go beyond or before you joined the county, but in the years that we have been doing this, rather than giving it to Bowser to do, has the funding from Bowser covered our costs?
This is new.
No, we started enforcing this pretty actively at least 5 years ago,
Okay,
and there was no additional funding.
so the funding is new.
Yes.
How, do we know what it did cost before to do the work?
I can't break it down to a percentage or a FTE percentage,
The fun,
but it was a considerable effort amongst several staff people, both doing site inspections been in our ordinance since 1989, when we went through a major revision and we adopted the shoreland rules. Currently, this provision is in our ordinance under shoreland under 11.3.7 number 10. It's an agricultural use performance standard. So it's been there. It has been in many of the ordinances throughout southeastern Minnesota and the counties. It just has not been actively enforced because it's mainly been for land use, for development permits. But I think there was a lawsuit that involved Olmsted County, perhaps some environmental groups who were the catalyst that forced a more active role from the governor's office to the state agencies and on the counties.
So the $87,000 funding is new this year,
In 2017.
last year. Okay, so that was the first year we got.
No, it's annual.
Yes.
And so this discussion, this buffer law is coming from the state regardless of what we do. It's just, do we want to enforce it or do we want to let them enforce it? And I understand your position is you want them to enforce it. This discussion was had, I sit on as a liaison for the Soil and Water Conservation District. So we had this very discussion about, well, do we want to let the state do it or do we want to do it? And since we've had it in ordinance since 1989, the discussion went that, of course, we want local control of this. We want people dealing with local representatives, just like when we talk about our feedlot officer and what we're doing there. That's a place where people feel comfortable dealing locally. The law is going to be there whether we accept the 87,000 or not.
I can make that same argument for any other area where you have a state mandate as well. And my commissioner is always complaining about state mandates and the expense of what the state is forcing down on us. And here's a prime example. We should let the Bowser do the enforcement. The state's mandating it.
No, the difference with many of the state mandates is many of them come with no funding. And like out-of-home placements cost the county taxpayers millions, and they're mandated by the state. So, I mean, this is different. This is something that we're already doing, we're going to continue to do. We've largely already done, and now there's funding to fund what's already happening.
Well, your argument is one of degrees, and I don't buy into it. So, anyhow, we don't know that it's adequately funded, and it's being forced on us by the state. So, I have other comments too.
Okay.
Okay, Don?
On page 15, paragraph 5.2, there's a phrase in there, or receives a third-party complaint from a private individual entity. I don't think that an agency should be compelled to act upon a third-party complaint, which may be mere allegations. This reeks of tyranny, and we see this in countries where there are tyrannies. Neighbors and even children are encouraged to report parents, relatives, and friends to the state to get some enforcement action in place. That phrase should be struck from this ordinance.
Which phrase is it?
It begins, or receives a third-party complaint from a private individual or entity.
5.2.
5.2, which sentence? The first paragraph, second paragraph?
5.2,
Compliance
first paragraph.
determinations.
We don't have line numbers here, but it's the second line of 5.2. It begins, or receives. And I would move that phrase be struck from the ordinance.
Okay, I'm not finding it.
It's on the second line of 5.2, the first paragraph.
Third-party complaint from a private individual or entity or not.
So is this
Would you like
the language that Bowser wants us? Is this Bowser's language or our language?
It does come from the model language that is from the Bowser statute. It also would be consistent with the way we handle every other form of violation, whether it's criminal, civil, any other form of complaints.
That doesn't make it proper.
There's a complaint and you determine how you're going to act on that.
But, my question specifically is, was this drafted by Winona County or was this drafted by Bowser?
It's from the template language that we received.
Okay.
And we don't have to adopt what Bowser's telling us to adopt, so.
We do if we want the funding. We do if we want the funding.
Well, we'll see how they react to this. My motion is to strike that phrase. And if it gets a second, fine. If it doesn't, it won't.
Kay?
Mr. Chairman, couple quick things. The buffer ordinance, the way that the draft Winona County buffer ordinance is currently written, has been reviewed by Bowser in its current version and is approved by them if it were to be passed exactly as it is. That being said, I need to defer to the planning commission. Things can be added or subtracted from it. This particular thing, however, with staff limitations, there's no way that we can be everywhere in the county inspecting everywhere. We can't even go out to inspect, 56 parcels. So people that are nearby, people that are neighbors, people that are driving down the road, call us about everything. We're the first stop for, there's a manure spill, there's, my neighbor's septic is leaking. Everything we do has third-party complaints associated with it. Nuisance, junk cars, it doesn't matter what the category is. So I looked at this as not something that would be inconsistent with other things that we do, that we would receive information, because we would send out an inspector automatically, not just take rumor and innuendo or anything like that on the phone, but we would log it and inspect it if it was something that seemed to be non-compliant that we received a report upon. So I just wanted to add procedurally what would happen if we received that type of call or complaint.
That's all well and good, but we don't need the language in the ordinance.
Is there someone willing to second Don's amendment? Hearing none, I say that it dies for lack of a second. Don?
And my third comment is minor. At the bottom of that page 15, the second bullet, we see the acronym APO, and unless I've missed something, I haven't seen it properly introduced before that
That's defined on
in
page
definitions.
13, 2.1.
But it is called out, introduced by its full name later on in the document. I think this is an appropriate place to put the full name in front of that APO here on page 15.
There is a definition of APO at 2.1.1 on page 13.
2.1.1, is that in the
First
definition?
definition.
Yeah, well,
It's
as well, it could be here without harm.
Does the commission wish to put the full spelling of APO at this point too, or what's your desires?
I mean, we could take it out on the bottom of page 16 where it is properly identified. The last line on 16. My point is to move it up where it belongs.
Steve?
Well, then, I mean, every definition here that we've got under definitions and general provisions, whether it's WSC, SWCD, Bowser, I mean, we'd have to go through the document and be consistent and do it on every one of them instead of just that one.
I think it's, whatever.
Well, it would make sense.
You like acronyms. I don't. Put the full name there the first time it's used in the body of the document, other than in definitions. That's all my point is. It's a minor thing. Forget it.
Okay, all I'm saying is then we should do it on all of them.
Pardon?
All I'm saying is then we should do it on all of them.
I think we do. Have, as you go through the document. This is, I didn't notice this problem anywhere else.
Okay.
Okay, is there any other discussion on this point? Hearing none, is there any other questions, comments? Mark?
Back to what Kay was talking about, there you got a letter back from the state, and the first one, it says, Section 4.5 does not acknowledge the alternative practices described by the buffer law. And it says this could be perceived as a conflict with statute and should be reviewed by the county attorney.
Where's that letter?
What page and approximately where, Mark?
Does have a number on it. Oh, 155. Planning Commission packet, 155. It's towards the back of the.
I mean, that's last month's packet? This month's packet doesn't have 155 pages.
Oh, then I'm in the minutes part. But anyway, it's still, it's a letter from the Board of Soil and Water Resources that has a comment to this that I.
Okay.
Because of our longstanding shoreland ordinance being more rigorous and having the 50-foot already codified in the ordinance, the standalone buffer ordinance does not refer to those alternative practices because most of them have alternatives to the 50-foot, and that would be against our own shoreline ordinance. So that's why they weren't included.
You understand?
I just
All right.
saw that the state had.
All right,
made
that's fine.
comments on what.
This
what
is,
was
this
written.
is the place to raise questions and the time. Any others?
Chairman.
Chris?
I think staff's done a great job, and I'd just like to thank them for all their work on it.
Okay.
Okay.
Don?
Am I interrupting someone here?
I don't believe so.
On page 16, 5.3.4, the counties may establish a local process to appeal a corrective action order. Is that process established in this ordinance?
No, it isn't. To answer you directly, and that would not be our intent.
Counties may establish. So there is no process for an individual to appeal a corrective action notice?
Individuals would appeal to Bowser directly instead of setting up a quasi-judicial appeal process of some sort that Bowser would end up weighing in on anyway. We felt like that might be less direct, and since if we were to give this back, Bowser would have it anyway. There is not a local appeal process.
If the county is going to assume enforcement duties, the county should have an appeal process in place. And of course, I will move that we do that, put a local process in place to appeal a corrective action noticed by the county.
I guess I think that makes sense.
So
I'll
you will second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Where, you want this in 5.3.4, right?
Legal staff would have to come up with some language for an appeal process.
It could probably simply state, counties may establish a local process.
Well, we could change away the word from may to shall. The county shall establish a local process.
And throughout our ordinance, we've got that sidebar. It gives it gives a great deal of power to the citizenry that if they feel like, somehow they're being bullied by the ordinance, they can appeal the process. And if you're going to impose the penalties and enforce them, you should have, I would think legally that you would want, before you had to go to a judge, you would want to say there was an appeals process that played out and now we're here because we couldn't resolve it.
And there would be an appeals process, it's just a matter of whether it's here or by Bowser, so it's not a matter of there not being.
But if we're,
If
yeah,
we need to
yeah.
put one together, we can sit down and figure that out, what would be an appropriate way for that to be handled. That instructed that we were going to need to do, which is why I wasn't going to do it. So, but we can always leave it the way that it is currently written with the expectation that we will come back with that language at a later date. We're already working on other zoning ordinance amendments that it could be included as a part of.
Well, even Don's suggesting that we change may to shall, and then it has to be done, right?
That would be true.
I think that sounds,
Is that how you would like your amendment?
Would we change the word counties to county? The county shall establish? That's what my motion would be, that Winona County shall establish a local process.
Okay, and Steve, you're in agreement?
yeah, I would support that.
All
I
right.
do, Chair, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would just like to go on record that I don't think this is necessary, and so it's not an amendment that I would support.
If I may counter, if a local office is imposing a sanction, a citizen should not have to go to the state for an appeal. The citizen should be able to make an appeal locally.
That's where I'm coming from, is if we want the enforcement, we should provide the relief. I mean, let's be consistent, let's not say, we want to tell you what to do. If you don't like it, go somewhere else.
Well, I guess, I think, like if you are found in violation of the county zoning ordinance, you do generally have to go outside of the county to appeal it. And that's generally district court, right?
No.
No, not initially.
So in our ordinance, multiple places it says, right here I'm looking at it, an applicant or a property owner has the ability to submit an administrative appeal as described in section 5.3.3, number 1, to a decision rendered by the planning director. So,
And if the bereaved citizen is not satisfied with the administrative appeal, he or she goes to the Board of Adjustment.
The Board of Adjustment handles the administrative appeal, and then if they're not satisfied with that, then they can go to district court from there.
yeah, but district court really is going to say, did you exhaust all your options before you wasted our time here, which is going to be, did you appeal it locally? So, I mean, it seems consistent with our ordinance.
Okay,
One quick, just point for discussion. If we have a feedlot that has received a letter of warning because they don't have a management plan, or they have a manure pit that's broken, and they have gone through a process with trying to find grants, several letters, and they've ignored the entire process, at some point it moves beyond the county back to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency regional office. And the state agency may have something to do with this process, because you cannot receive a variance through the Board of Adjustments for noncompliance to the buffer. So that will be against state statute and is not permitted. So the Board of Adjustment cannot grant a variance on lack of compliance with the 50-foot buffer. So we'll just have to make sure to work out in the process, if the planning commission so moves forward with this, a way that we do not violate state agency, with our process, and then we bring it back to you for review.
The resolution of the agreements cannot require a variance, but there should be a means for local appeal because of the local administrative action.
Because the language also says may, it may establish, we can do whatever it is that, and bring that back to you folks.
And
is there any more discussion on this amendment? Hearing none, I presume that it is time to vote on Donnie's amendment. Now, Stephanie, would you read it so that I don't get it screwed up?
It would be to amend the second sentence of section 5.3.4 to read, Winona County shall establish a local process to appeal a corrective action notice.
Okay, are we all clear on what we're voting on? All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to the amendment say nay.
Nay.
We need a roll call.
Let's at least have a show of hands. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment say, raise your hand. Okay, all those opposed to the amendment, raise your hand. Okay?
You need to vote to break.
As
You have to
chair,
tally.
I vote in favor of the amendment. Okay,
Motion carries.
the motion is carried. Let's see, is there, Don?
That brings us to the top of page 18.
Well, we're making progress.
Should that not now read, maybe appeal to Winona County within 30 days?
Stephanie?
An APO is a different item than a notice of noncompliance. The notice of noncompliance is more localized, it's more, where you're not in compliance and they can appeal whether or not they think they are. The county order is more restrictive and it's a different entity.
But the county can issue a joint APO and
They can be issued jointly, but they are two
CAN.
different things that have two different sets of requirements and two different levels of scrutiny. And two different timetables.
Well, I would make the same argument that if, sure, the ultimate authority is the Bowser, but there should be opportunity for local appeal. If the county's doing a joint CAN and APO that a citizen has a grievance with, they should have an opportunity for local appeal before being forced to go to the state agency. Same argument.
Question, Mr. Chair, does the Minnesota statute require the APO be appealed to Bowser?
That is my understanding. We are not issuing simultaneous APOs and letters, notifications of corrective action. There's an 11-month period before the APOs kick in. So in essence, somebody's getting a letter and, they call up and say, look, we have proof that we're in compliance or we're going to be in compliance. There's a period of time when the clock is ticking, and then before an APO would kick in. And then at that point, the APO can be appealed to Bowser.
Somewhere it says the county may issue joint CANs and APOs. Where does it say that the county will not issue APOs?
Well, the county will issue APOs with the timetable after an 11-month.
And if this is codified in statute, it does. The statute specifically says a landowner or agent or operator may appeal the terms and conditions of soil and water conservation, district validation, or an administrative penalty order to the board, meaning Bowser, within 30 days of receipt of written or electronic notice that must be in writing. So statutorily, it requires the appeal to go there.
There's nothing to prohibit Winona County first having an appeal process.
The timeline does, because they have 30 days from the issuance of the APO to appeal to Bowser. So unless Winona County is going to be able to pull together an appeals process in between there and still allow for it to get there, we have to have a ridiculously short timeline in order to accommodate the Bowser timeline.
Should not be impossible. I'm not satisfied with that. I think it should be amended. An APO issued under this section may be appealed to Winona County within 30 days of the receipt by the landowner in accordance with would be my recommendation.
Then they would miss out on the timelines for Bowser.
Pardon?
They have 30 days to
It would
appeal to
impinge
Bowser.
upon the timeline.
Yes.
Yeah.
It would. They have 30 days to appeal to Bowser. Anything we do has to be done within that time.
I don't think statute allows us to modify it.
It doesn't.
Okay, anything else? Steve?
Yeah, just maybe comment that I attended both Farm Bureau meetings and Soil and Water District meetings, and so when the buffer law was still coming and whether they kind of wanted to take a stance against it or what they wanted to do. And many of the farmers felt like, since this has been a long-standing ordinance in Winona County and 90-some% of the farmers have already complied to it, they felt as though, hey, how would it be fair for us now to oppose that or back down and say the remainder of these parcels don't have to meet the strict standards that the rest of us just willingly did all these years ago. So they said, in an effort to be consistent, because, quite frankly, I'm not big on imposing regulations on property rights, but just the sequence of events, the way this played out, I think it makes sense to just stay the course. It's fair for everyone. Many people have been doing this for many years, and we're nearly fully compliant. Just follow through with this, and there's going to be less than 30 property owners that probably have very little to do. I think we don't have any violations that are even an acre, do we?
We'll be going through, shortly and looking.
Many of these are just a fraction of an acre.
Tenth of an acre here and there, kind of things.
And then that puts the whole parcel, so the whole parcel looks like it's in violation. The reality is pretty minor. A couple people are going to be nicked by a tenth of an acre near a creek. Unfortunate for those people, but it just seems like the feedback I've got from my constituents, by and large, has been follow this through and make it consistent and bring everyone to the same set of regulations. So I'm supportive of all this.
I guess just a second, Don. I guess at this time I would second Commissioner Jacobs' comments. I'm in agreement. All right, Don.
I find it strange that everyone that promotes local control in these environmental issues all of a sudden wants to push appeal to a state agency. That strikes me as odd. My final comment on all of this is that this whole buffer ordinance statute, or ordinance and statute, is a taking. Now, it's easy for people that aren't rural landowners to say, well, so what, let's take it. But that isn't the way it should be. There should be compensation, some tax abatement for these buffer areas that can't be fully utilized to the extent that the present owners and their ancestors expected them to be utilized. That's a taking that should be compensated for. If it's for the public good, which it is, protection of our waters, it should be at the expense of the public in general, not at the expense of the particular landowners. That's all I have to say.
In response to that, I would say if this was 1989, I'd be right there with you. But there's been more than 25 years of people working towards this level of compliance. The state just happened to come along with something that dovetailed with what Winona County has been enforcing for the last 25 years. It would be chaos to upset that at this point. So.
Well, my comment at this point, Steve, is we got enough chaos now. Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to move that we accept this with the one modification on page 16, changing may to shall.
In Winona County.
And the word Winona.
Is that a recommendation that the county board approve the?
It is. I move that we recommend to the county board that we approve this with those two word changes on page 16.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mark seconds it.
I request a roll call vote.
Okay. Is there any, we don't have to ask for more discussion, do we, or, no? Well, hearing none. We will proceed with the,
Does there need to be justification for the roll call vote? We just had a show of hands when I asked for a roll call vote.
She asked for roll call.
Okay.
It's in the rules.
Yeah, she has
I
to
don't
roll
need a
call.
reason.
All right, we will vote on this proposal as Kelly proposed with a roll call vote. So you want to start with you?
I will start.
Go ahead.
I vote to approve.
Yes.
Mark votes to approve. Sheree votes to approve. Steve votes to approve. Chris votes to approve.
Don
Don.
votes nay.
Don votes nay. The proposal passes as amended. And it will be recommended to the county commissioners for their approval by the planning commission. Is that correct? Okay. Let's see, I gotta get back to the agenda then, don't I? Oops.
Yeah, rules of procedure.
All right, now who's going to, no.
Right here is really high.
All right, rules of procedural annual review, which hasn't been done since what year, Kay?
2009.
Okay,
All right.
so,
Actually, 2010 and the other years we did review them, and it's just no comments.
okay, all right.
This copy says 2004.
All right.
So annually, these don't have to be changed. Our thought was just tidy them up, and oftentimes it may just be that no changes occur, as our zoning administrator just stated. We've informally looked at them a couple of times since then. They haven't been officially readopted. And so you have three things in your packet: a rules of procedure that is a clean copy to look through, one that has both blue and red markup, so you could see Stephanie and my comments. And in a couple cases, I had the word variance instead of conditional use permit, because Board of Adjustment also did this, and so Stephanie caught a couple of typos of mine. But that's why you have two different colors of ink in the marked up copy. And then the final document that you have is the previous rules of procedure, the last one that I could see in the files. And like I said, Eric mentioned that they've informally, touched them up or at least reviewed them. So that's what these three documents are, and we can make changes as the Planning Commission sees fit after your review.
Okay, now, which page do we start on, or is it up to us? If somebody has a comment, please tell me what page you're talking about so that I can try and find out where you're at. Okay,
If you wanted to review the clean copies, the clean copy is the first one. If there's anything that is language you don't like or that you think is missing something, that was the spot to start, and you can kind of go back to the original language was. Just a suggestion.
so that's on page 35, right?
On page 25 is the,
Or 25, excuse me. Kelly.
There was, I think it was at the last meeting, well, a couple of times we've talked about the timing of our meeting versus the county board meeting. And, this does say that it'll be the third Thursday at 7 p.m. And it sounded as though from some of those discussions that it might be a good idea to consider changing our meeting date to accommodate. Please.
The problem with changing our meeting date to accommodate means we're also then changing the deadline for applications, because what triggered this is the receive an application. Then
Right.
staff has to have a certain amount of time in order to be able to process it, get the appropriate notices out, and get it to this body to get it to the next recommendation.
Right.
So if we move our meeting, then we're also moving that deadline, and we're not changing anything. Because the county board essentially meets every 2 weeks with a few exceptions where there was a 3-week gap, just based on the way that Tuesdays fall. So it wouldn't really have as much of an impact as you think.
So it doesn't really help. Okay. Never mind.
Okay, well, I understand what you were trying to accomplish, and I appreciate that. However, some of these rules, you know, it's just kind of like the Indian, that he was cold. And so he decided he was going to cut 6 inches off the bottom of his blanket, and he sewed it back on the top of his blanket. And he discovered after he did that he was still cold. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Was there something in here I thought I saw about the chair not voting?
That's in here somewhere. Under,
Where is that? Duties? No. Vote.
let's see, where did I have that? It's under duties, paragraph 2.3.
Chairperson shall not move for action or second a motion, but may vote on any issue if they wish, and must vote in the case of a tie vote.
So that was something that the county board recently dealt with. The county board used to have the same policy where the chair would not make motions or second motions, would facilitate the meetings. But in that case, we felt as though a certain part of the constituency doesn't have the same, the chair, in fact, essentially has less power or can't represent this constituents the way everyone else can. So my feelings is that the chair should have no more power or no less power. And this gives the chair less power than the rest of the members. And if someone in the community comes to the chair and wants them to bring something up and they're muzzled because of this, I feel that's unfair to the constituents.
Don?
There might not be an exact parallel here. The county board is elected by district. We're appointed at large. So, also there's something that, where did I read it? That the chair shall not speak until the rest of the commission has had opportunity. Do you recall that somewhere?
We stayed with that at the county board.
Okay.
Somebody has to facilitate the meeting, and to kind of keep the chair from just continually having the floor. They have to facilitate everyone else first, and then they speak last.
All right.
But I guess I would make a motion that we amend this to read.
Now, where are you going to
So
put
we're-
this?
It's under duties, 2.3.
Top of page 31.
Okay, yep.
It reads currently reads the chairperson shall not move for action or second a motion. I think that should just be stricken.
Oh, but must vote, but you want to retain, but must vote.
Chair
Yeah, right.
If they wish and must
Right.
vote in the case of a
So
tie.
strike all that stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
the chair, yeah.
I would second that motion.
Okay. Kelly has seconded the motion by Steve. You got that, Ann? Okay. Don?
Is it clear then that the chairport, in the context of the chair is not to speak until the rest of the,
We didn't change anything there.
Huh?
We didn't change any of that.
yeah, but in the context of that, would it not be that the chairperson could not make or second a motion until no one else has?
In other words, I can't speak until you get done speaking, Don.
So So if the chair is allowed to make a motion, is the chair allowed to make it ahead of what motion somebody else may offer? Or should they only be allowed to make a motion and second one if no one else has?
I think they get to make it whenever they want to.
I think if it's a motion, and that's the one place at the county board level, we just have to put on our lights and gain access, and then go in sequence, unless it's a motion or second. You don't have to, I mean, you can just state your motion at any time. That, the chair would then be able to make the motion, but they still couldn't monopolize the floor. They'd still have to wait for everyone else to speak before they could support their motion. So, yeah, I feel like.
Is that compatible, Stephanie, or?
I'm not seeing anything in these rules that indicates that the chair has to wait to speak, so.
I don't see that either.
That's
Kind
in our-
of thing. I didn't see it in the language here, so.
I'm not seeing it.
It's here somewhere, I think.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, is there any other discussion on Steve's motion? Ann, do you have some questions, or Stephanie, do you have it?
I do have it. It would be to remove shall not move for action or second a motion, comma, but, to remove that language out of there, and it would then read, the chairperson may vote on any issue if they wish and must vote in the case of a tie vote.
That's in 2.3.
Thank you.
Okay,
Does it make any sense to say may vote or second any issue? Or does that go without saying? If you can vote, yeah, motion, if you can make a motion, you can obviously second, yeah.
all right. Is there any other discussion on the amended wordage? Hearing
I'd
none.
like a roll call vote.
Okay, fine. Hearing none, we will have a roll call vote on this proposal. Kelly,
I'm in favor of it.
Kelly votes in favor. Mark?
Yes.
Mark, yes.
Yes.
Therese, yes. Steve is yes.
Aye.
Chris is yes. Don?
Don votes nay.
Okay. And I can vote too, right?
You can.
Okay, I'll vote for my embellished duties and responsibilities. Okay, any more?
Oh, I have a question.
Chris?
I found on top of my booklet, the respectful workplace email, notice. Do I need to sign and leave Appendix B with someone here? Please. Thank you.
Doesn't seem like the time, but.
Oh, I have a question, and I presume this is not pertinent to our discussion, but did we pass around the paper for us to sign, or? It's up here somewhere? Oh, okay. All right, well, we better get started on it. All right, going back to, what's the matter at hand?
A motion. We just passed it. So, further discussion. Any further discussion?
Any further discussion?
Of what?
Of the,
We just approved it.
no, we just approved a amendment. So now,
Are you sure?
Yeah?
the original, so the next thing would be to approve the rule, the new rules of procedure.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second to Kelly's move?
I'll second that.
Or oh, Sharice seconds it. All right, now,
Did you have a comment?
is there any other comments? And so, we have no room for error. Stephanie, can you state what what we are actually voting on here now?
It would be to re-adopt as amended the rules and procedures.
Okay? Everybody's clear on what we're doing?
I'd like to solve what it was.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. I believe it's unanimously passed. And now, what's the next thing on our agenda? We need Board of Adjustment.
The Board of Adjustment met this afternoon and elected as chair for this coming year Margaret Walsh, vice chair Phil Schwanz, and recommended as liaison to this commission Richard Honeywell. And we also went through our rules of procedure annual review with not quite as much discussion and approved it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I guess I'd like to thank Cherie for her service here. I think she's done a very studious job, and she's treated everyone, including the petitioners, the public, the staff, and colleagues on the commission with respect. And I appreciate that, and I thank you for your service.
And put in long Thursdays.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's almost unrecognized part, because she gets the 4 or 5 hours we get, plus the 3 or 4 hours before she gets here.
Yep.
Okay, at this time,
Yes.
thank you.
I'd like to second that motion. Thank you, Sheree.
At this time, I missed last month's meeting, but did anybody thank Joy for, okay, that's good.
Hey, there was even treats.
Well, that's even better. Steve, I guess it's your turn.
Yeah, so the business from this board that goes to the county board, we had the Gibbs solar arrays application and the Maish solar application, and the county board approved both of those without modifications. The county board approved them as recommended by this board. So.
Okay, is there any other business that should be brought before this planning commission?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Don moved that we adjourn and Kelly seconded it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are officially adjourned.